Well, we know what near-death experiences have done to Daniel Brinkley, one of our guests. In a moment, you'll be hearing from Kevin Montague. You'll hear about his two near-death experiences and what they've done for him as well. And his book is called The Master's Key to Unlocking and Mastering Chronic Disease and how that's affected him as well. So Kevin's next with us on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast. George Noory with you. Our special guest, Kevin Montague, author, scholar, artisan, scientist. Kevin has had two near-death experiences, which truly opened his mind to how the world works, as well as the science behind various topics, including what causes cancer. His 20-year journey dealing with the chronic disease process led to this book, The Master's Key, taking science into the next 40 years to come. Kevin, welcome to the program. It's going to be good chatting with you on this.
Hello, George. How you doing?
I'm doing fine, and I hope you are too after two near-death experiences. My gosh.
Oh, those were the easy part of living life.
Well, what happened? Can you tell us?
Well, the first experience happened when I was 25 years old. I came home one night and lied down on my bed, and suddenly I had this really bad pain in my left side, and it got worse and worse. Now, I was living with a roommate in that time period to help cover the costs. I wasn't rich. You know, scholars aren't really very rich people.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, but we love knowledge and we love truth, and we do everything we can to search it out. And so I finally couldn't get out of bed, so I picked up the phone next to me, and I called my roommate, and I told him I was in trouble. And he was at a party that night, and he said, I'll be there right away. And so he came and got me down to the car. He took me to my mother's location. She's passed away since that time, but you know, moms always know best, you know.
That's right.
So he took me there first, and she said, we got to put him in the hospital. So they all drove me over to Hollywood Presbyterian Hospital and put me in a room within all my pain. And these doctors came in. A few of them were ones that my mother knew at the time that she trusted. And they said, well, you know, what we're going to have to do is we don't know if it's your kidneys or it's your GI tract or something else. Mm-hmm. We're going to have to go in and look. So they asked me if I was open to doing a pyelogram. And at that time, I didn't have the knowledge I have now. And I said, what's that? You know. And so they told me. And I said, oh, that's fine. You know, I don't mind that. So the next day they prepared me for the exam.
You had to go the whole night in withering pain, huh?
Yeah. Well, no, they tried to give me stuff to ease the pain. It sort of took the edge. You know, the drugs sort of took the edge off of it, but, you know, it was only like a 50% decrease. So, yeah, I had to live through the night in the pain. And finally they came and got me in the morning, and they got me ready on a gurney and everything, and took me into the operating room. And, George, I hadn't seen an operating room since I was a boy.
Right, exactly. You're only 25 years old, for crying out loud.
I know. I mean, I did have bad eyesight. I had 2 surgeries done on that, my tonsils removed, an appendectomy. So I did have some understanding of what an operating room was, but then it passed, you know, and I'd forgotten about it, you know. Now here I am going in again at age 25, and as they got me ready, one of the things I remember was they put this 3-inch needle into my hand, and ouch.
That hurts.
That really hurt. And given I was raised kind of Catholic Christian, and I was raised on understanding the Bible and all of that, I thought, gee, I wonder if that's how the nails felt going into Christ. I said to myself,
yeah, that's true.
That hurts. So they finished hooking me up to whatever it was they were hooking me up to. But right about then, I kind of said a prayer, a silent prayer, to our Lord in heaven. And I said, Jesus, I realize I'm not where I'm really supposed to be in my life. And I know something's gone terribly wrong. And because I knew from a boy I was an abused child. My mother beat me more often than I should have ever gotten beaten. But she didn't know I was a prodigy. They didn't have really any support for that back in the 1960s. It's different today.
It is dramatically different.
Dramatically different when you find kids like that. I was really more of an autistic child that grew up into a savant with the knowledge that I possess at this time in my life. So I was thinking of that and how I was withdrawn in my life and wasn't doing where I really wanted to be. And so I asked him, I said, can I see you when they put me under, and can I talk to you? Will you honor my request? And I left it at that. It was my simple prayer. So the nurses and the doctors came in, and they transferred me over to the operating table. And I was lying there looking at the big lights, they have over an operating.
Right into your face.
Right into my face, And I go, oh, God, that's bright. And right above my head is this young guy. I can see his face, or he's upside down, because he's standing over me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he looks at me and he says, we're going to inject you with sodium pentothal. And I said, yeah, I think I know what that is.
That's the Truth Serum, isn't it?
Yeah, well, many people think it's Truth Serum, yeah.
That's how I think of it.
It gets rid of all your inhibitions, so you'll say anything. But he said, we're going to bring you about, he takes his fingers like an inch apart from each other, and so we're going to bring you this close to death with sodium pentothal.
Jeez.
He said, that's what sodium pentothal does. And I said, well, okay, I wasn't scared or anything. I knew they were there. And I said my humble prayer. So he looks at me and he says, okay, I want you to count back from 100. And he says, I'll bet you won't make it till 90. So he said, okay. I started counting 100, 99, 98, and kept going. And finally, when I finally reached, I think, 94 or 93, all of a sudden, the big lights over the operating room, George, just literally exploded into light all around me. I wasn't asleep, but I'd been transported into this place. There was nothing but light everywhere I looked.
Was it like an out-of-body experience?
Oh, I was totally out of my body.
Yeah.
I wasn't in my body anymore. Our bodies are nothing but machines. We interface with as spiritual beings.
Exactly.
Light. That's what I discovered when I was in the light. And I was kind of re-educated to the whole thing of what we know before we're born kind of thing. Is the best way I can explain my experience. So I was standing there in the light. I was at first a little bit disoriented, going, what happened? Where am I?
Sure.
It's kind of like, Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, where am I now? The house just crashed and I'm surrounded by all this light. And I turned around 180 degrees, and I realized I'm standing there. Everything is as real as you and I walking through this world. In fact, more real than what we experience here. So I turned around 180 degrees, and George, there behind me was this huge portal with kind of a fuzzy, misty edge around it. And I could look into space, what we call outer space. The light refers to as space. I'll explain that in a little bit. But I was seeing the Earth and the sun shining on it, and all you guys were there as I looked through the portal. And later on, a lot of this had a lot of significance to me. So anyway, I turned around back about another 90 degrees to my right and looked straight up into the light. And I could see that the light had distance in it. And I didn't understand that right away. Then all of a sudden, as I kept staring, all of this interchange was going on between me and the light as all the questions in my mind were being answered at rapid speed, incredibly rapid speed. And all of a sudden, I looked into the light, and there was one verse from the Bible I remembered from the earth, and it was the one where Jesus said, when you do this to the least of my brethren, you do this to me. And George, all of a sudden, I stood there and I went, oh, I should have seen it before when I was a boy. He is the whole thing. Even though he takes the persona form he does when he appears on the earth, the light is what Christians call the Holy Spirit of God, or the entire Spirit of God. But they don't understand what they're talking about, and they can't see the key verses in the Bible that tell them. I can see them now, having been there. And I just was going, oh, I get it. And George, all of a sudden, every single thing I had asked in life just came together in one big whoosh. And I was at peace. I went, I get it. I understand what this whole thing is about. Now, just as that happened, I brought my head down, and right in front of me, this circular opening appears in the light, made of kind of bluish, silvery white light, actually a little bit darker. and it parts from the middle out. Best way I can explain it is like a drape. I don't know why it did that, but it did. And the one who steps out of it, who's all made of bluish, silvery white light, is the one that we call Jesus in this world.
Geez, what an epiphany you got.
No kidding. And by the way, when all of this is happening, the light is pouring knowledge into you. You know everything that's happening without any doubts, any questions as to what you're experiencing.
And are you dead at this time, at least for minutes or seconds?
No. Well, not that I was aware of, but I think they lost me temporarily on the table because something happened when I came under the galaxy.
Well, I think they lost you, and that's what separated your soul from your body.
Correct. I think they pretty much. I didn't ask directly, but one gal said to me when I came back, she said, "Mr. Montague is so glad to have you with us."
Wow.
And I thought to myself, well, what did they do, lose me? And I thought, oh, God, they did. You know.
So he maybe gave you too much of the sodium?
Well, I don't know. But it didn't matter to me because I was out of the whole thing. I was separate from my body. Whatever they were doing to my body, I couldn't feel a thing.
And probably could care less.
And I could care less.
Yeah.
Seriously. The other thing is this euphoria that you feel is like better than any drug you could take on planet Earth. But you have total clarity of mind, incredible clarity of mind, and you feel great. It's almost like this is the way we're supposed to feel all the time while walking on this planet, and we've cut ourselves off from it. That was one of the other things that came into my mind as I was feeling this peace and euphoria. And like I said, the opening happened, and then who stepped out of the light, made a bluish silvery white light, was Jesus. But he was in this form so he could be offsetted by the light all around us so I could see him and understand him. And while he walked towards me, George, entire planets were blasting out of his torso and going into the universe, and there was like smoke, fire, lightning. I mean, the sound was deafening. And then old planets were coming into the light and going back into his torso. And I said, yes, sir, I get it. You are the whole thing. That's what you were trying to tell us when you were on the earth. So when we hurt each other, you feel it. Because you are everything, the bodies that we're in, everything around us. He is the entire creation. So he gave me a smile, you know, but it was hard to make out the smile because his light, his face was this blazing ball of light.
Yeah.
And it was bright. I couldn't believe this was possible. It was brighter than the light we were in.
Well, did you sense it was him or you knew it was him?
I knew.
You did? Okay.
Without any doubt who I was in the presence of, and he knew that I knew. So he stands there with his arms folded, you know, down to where the waist is, folded in front of him, very casual, and the light's blazing off of his face, and he's scanning me, and I can feel the light going up and down my being. You know, at this point I have no physical body, I just have the spiritual body that takes the form of my physical body, and he's scanning me, and he stops right in the middle of my heart. He goes down to my feet, goes back up, and the light rays hit my heart. And all the pain and heartache that was in my heart, the light went right into my chest, grabbed the pain, and kept right on going. And all of a sudden
took it with it.
Yeah, it just took it all away. And I just felt, oh, that felt so good. You know?
At what point did they send you back?
What finally happened was he it's funny that you say they, because eventually all these other masters came out of the light to consult with him and to talk with him. Because every one of us that are here, we're helping them to learn on the other side. So the ones that are these other masters that are learning, they're under his lordship. And if they fail to do something with a particular soul, they have to answer directly to him. And he never is angry. Doesn't get angry or mad, but he gently corrects them and says, okay, here's what you did wrong, blah, blah, blah. And what happened is during one part of the interaction was all the light started to get a little bit darker, and that's when all these ascended masters, the best way to call them, came out of the light, and they were talking with them. And they had their little powwow. Meanwhile, they wouldn't let me hear what they were talking about because it's all telepathically done. You don't talk with your mouth. It's far faster and far greater in clarity, even when you're transmitting images to each other, to just use your mind to mind. But it's more than mind to mind. It's like mind inside of mind. It's empathic. It's not just intellect. It's also emotion. And while they were having their powwows, what I call it, I was talking with the light because I had nothing to do, So I'm looking at the light, and the light is showing me two worlds like this world that I had lived on prior to this life, which were more advanced technologically.
Other physical planets?
Yes, other physical planets.
Okay.
The light remembers everything. So anything that you've experienced, it stores all that information. It never loses anything. So it was showing me here were other worlds that you lived on prior to coming here. This is how advanced you were on those worlds. This is why we needed you here on the earth, so far. That's what the Master's Key is going to reveal when everybody reads it. And so while I'm having this little chat with the light, all of a sudden Jesus breaks out of his powwow with the other masters. He turns to me with this big smile on his face, and he waves his right arm towards me, and he says, "Come on home." That's the way he said it. Come on home. In other words, you don't have to go back and go for any more of that. And I said, okay. I didn't quarrel with him.
And then in home meaning the physical?
To heaven.
To heaven. Oh, he was going to take you.
Yeah.
Whoa.
He was ready to take me, Listen, George, I talk to him day and night. I've been doing it since I was a boy. So, he hears it all from me. And I pray for everyone, too. And he hears all of our prayers, and I pray for all of you guys, even specific people.
And again, this is the first near-death experience.
This is just the first near-death experience. So he walks up to me, and he puts his right arm around my shoulder, which felt good, and he's walking, quietly with me, and a new opening opens up in the light leading into heaven, which looked gorgeous. And right when he's walking with me, all of a sudden something caught my attention. I turned up, looking over my right side, straight up into the light. And all of a sudden the light is showing me the lives of my brother, my mother, and my father. And it's showing me that they're teeter-tottering between heaven and hell. And it's also making it perfectly clear that hell is real, and so is Hades, what we call the Greek term for Hades.
Mm-hmm.
And so I looked up into it, and I was very hurt and concerned. Suddenly, Jesus stops. He gets in front of me with he's like a foot away from me, and his head is this blazing ball of light. George, I could hardly keep my spiritual eyes open looking at him.
I believe it, yeah.
I was going, oh, man, turn the light down, And he looks at me very seriously, and he says, what's troubling you? And I said, Lord, it's my noblemen. That's what I call them, my noblemen. My brother was Patrick, my mother was Patricia, my father was Patrick, and those names mean noble or noble man.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a king to our Lord. I'm one of his lords and kings, and they were put together so I could appear on the earth and have the support I needed to do what I was sent here to do. So he looks at me and he says, what troubles you? And I told him. And he says, well, then you need to go back to be sure they're going to be all right. And I thought,
aha. Okay.
And I thought, I should have kept my mouth shut.
You really would have stayed.
I would have stayed. Yeah, absolutely. Wow. I got to tell you right now, I can hardly wait to leave. Everybody is so interested in clinging on to their lives here, and I go, oh, no, this is crap next to what's waiting for all of us when we get to his realm.
Well, once you get back, I'm very curious if they diagnose what the pain was also.
Okay, I'll get to that in just a sec. So he says...
Hold on for a second. We're already at the break, Kevin. We'll come back and talk about this near-death experience. Then we've got to talk about the second one, and then we'll talk about how it has had this profound effect on you.